Joining me right now here from Canton, Ohio. I'll be hanging out with him all day tomorrow live on NFL Network's coverage of the enshrinement ceremony. But joining us here on the Rich Eisen Show is Steve Wyche. How are you, Steve?
Hey, Rich, I'm great. And not having Steve Hutchinson there with you at the Gold Jacket dinner for that little Michigan support. I mean, I know how hard they come at you here, and you have really been trumping them the past few years with the Big Blue. I love it.
Yeah, and this is the first time I've ever done it coming off of a national championship, though, Steve. So I've already told my guys I'm coming in peace. I come in peace here. You know what I mean? So, but it's good to see you here. I just already saw you in the elevator lobby just a couple of hours ago. So walk me through where you are, who's there. Give people a little bit of a taste of what it's like to be where you are on a Friday before induction Saturday.
Yeah, this is great. So I'm at the hotel where all of the Hall of Famers stay here in downtown Canton, Ohio. And right now they've got a special luncheon. The Ray Nitschke luncheon was exclusive for the Hall of Famers. A lot of great messages are sent. They've got a couple meetings. They did the team photo. And then later tonight, they'll go to the Gold Jacket ceremony, which you marvelously MC every year, where they welcome the class of 2024. But Rich, I mean, I got to tell you, we know there's only 377 people who've ever played, coached, or contributed to this game who are in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And to be here where a lot of living members are just walking around and shooting fish in a greatness barrel, it is just the greatest thing ever. It never gets old. You understand the magnitude of the rarefied air of the Pro Football Hall of Fame, just being in an environment like this. And I think it's something both you and I treasure, being invited back here every year to be a part of this.
Who have you spoken to today already?
Oh, man. Well, we just spoke to Richard Dent. He'll be part of a ceremony to bring in Steve McMichael from the Bears. Tom Jackson, who's here for Randy Gradishar. They played on the Great Orange Crush defense, your old colleague there at the Four Letter Network. Spoke to Andre Reed, who talked about the only offensive player going into the class of 24. Another Andre Johnson. And, of course, Tony Dungy is going to be speaking with us as well. He was the man, his first draft pick with the Colts was Dwight Freeney, who also is a member of the class of 2024. So it's been great. I've been cussed out by Charles Haley. He loves to do that every time I see him. He walks by me. It's an annual ritual. So, he had to give it to me right there, and, definitely cannot go into that conversation whatsoever. But I will say this. He is not happy that Dak and CD and Micah Parsons are not signed down in Dallas.
What do you mean? What do you say?
I cannot repeat what he said, but I will try to surmise this in that they need to be there, and that he believes that the reason why they're not signed, and again, it's Charles Haley, not me, is that the owner is actually trying to save some money. He sees all these other teams signing their guys, like Detroit signing everybody to these mega contracts, and some of these other teams, and he believes the owner is trying to save a little money this year, is not really sure where things are going to go, but thinks that maybe he's trying to save some money so next year he can spend some money on maybe a new head coach and some other position players.
So he's not all in, is what Charles Haley has essentially told you, Steve.
Look, it's Charles's prism. It's Charles's prism. And we know that's an interesting prism, but yeah. I mean, look, things can change. They can get deals done in the next couple of weeks. But, yeah, Charles believes at the moment, for the time being, maybe he's not all in.
I got to seek out 94 tonight. Have a little chit-chat with him, and maybe we should get him on NFL Network tomorrow. Maybe we should get him on our set.
There we go.
5-second delay, of course. Steve Wyche here on the Rich Eisen Show. So I would love for you to tell this story, because you told it to me off air. Because you were there for all the door knocks. You were part of the coverage of that, and the door knocks again occur in January, where returning, current Hall of Famers knock on the doors of those who are about to get the call from the Hall, and they inform them that they're going to be inducted in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And you said you spoke to Tony, or you're talking to Tony Dungy today. He was the one who knocked, if you will, on the door of Dwight Freeney, but he didn't knock on a door. He showed up where and who was in on all of this, Steve? And that's the way I set you up for that, if you don't mind.
So when it comes to Dwight Freeney, the person who developed the ruse to surprise him in part was Michael Jordan. Dwight Freeney and Michael Jordan played golf together on Michael Jordan's course outside of Jupiter, Florida, at least 4 days a week. So this was like to Dwight Freeney, it was a routine golf outing with Michael Jordan. But MJ and Dwight's wife and a couple of people set it up so that Tony Dungy and our crew and Jim Porter, the president of the hall, would be there to surprise him. The only potential tip MJ gave him was, don't come showing up in a T-shirt and gym shorts. We're taking special pictures for Grove 23, the golf course, so dress a little nicer. Otherwise, It was like a regular day. And Dwight walks in the door, and there's Tony. And the great thing about having the Hall of Famers notify, the new class coming in, is it's hard for these Hall of Famers to keep it together. I mean, imagine Tony Dungy, who's had Derek Brooks, who's had John Lynch and Rondé Barber and other people that he's coached go in, and he's still looking at his first draft choice with the Indianapolis Colts, and he's breaking the news to him. Like, it's hard for these guys to keep it together. So here's Tony on the verge of tears notifying Dwight Freeney that he's about to join the 377, who are going to be memorialized forever in Canton, Ohio.
I love that, Steve. And so does that mean is Jordan going to be here this weekend? Is he going to be there tonight, tomorrow? Do you know?
I think there's a good chance. I think there's a chance that Jordan could be here. I don't know. I don't know what MJ's schedule is, but sure. I'm hearing that Dwight told me he's bringing close to 300 people. Wow. And that I would think his inner circle. Now, he rolls with some guys now. He rolls with MJ and some people of that caliber because MJ's golf club is pretty exclusive. So I would not be surprised to see some high-level sports figures, celebrity types here celebrating Dwight. And Rich, you're here every year. You know that, like, the magnitude of some of the people who just come back to be a part of this is next level. So I wouldn't be surprised to see a lot of high-level folks here.
Steve Wyche here, my colleague from the NFL Network, NFL Media Group. We're going to be hanging out for the coverage of Induction Saturday all day on NFL Network. Joining me here currently on the Rich Eisen Show. What did Richard Dent say about this moment for Steve McMichael? Let us in on all of that.
Oh, man. Well, first off, when we notified Steve McMichael that he was going into the hall, it was Richard Dent who made the call, and Steve's wife, Misty, who'll be at the Gold Jacket ceremony and will be representing him. She took the call, was holding the phone up to Steve, and he started crying, actually. As you know, Steve McMichael is very debilitated with ALS. It was an incredibly moving moment. So Richard was reliving that, but he was also letting people know that this was a guy, when they played on that great Bears defense, the great 85 Bears defense and those other great defenses, it was not designed for defensive tackles to make plays. And here's a guy who's got 95 sacks playing with Richard Dent and Dan Hampton in the fridge on that D-line. And so how great of a player he was, how strong he was, and he was a huge character. Remember, Steve McMichael went on to be a WWE wrestler. But he was always somebody also who was like deeply religious, and like him and Singletary would actually get into these heavy conversations about the Bible in team meetings. So, Richard was telling some stories, and he said they've got a big surprise planned for Steve McMichael. I don't know what that is because Steve cannot be here and will not be here, but they've got something on their sleeve, which they say is going to be very memorable and quite historic for his enshrinement. So I'm really looking forward to that.
Well, and again, I know I'm asking questions you may not know the answer to, and usually I only ask questions I know that my guest knows the answer to, or maybe I do. But any prime sightings? Because I know Devin Hester's like a son to him.
I have not seen Dion here. We know he's getting ready for his camp at the University of Colorado, but a lot of times his coaches who coach, they'll take time away. So I wouldn't be surprised because Rich, that relationship. It goes back to when like Devin was in high school. They are very intertwined. I mean, Devin's got like 5 jerseys hanging on this massive wall in his house, and one of them is Deion Sanders. So that'd be great. We know Deion is a Pro Football Hall of Famer. I haven't seen him. That doesn't mean he's not here or won't be here, because some people come in for that enshrinement Saturday. So again, that's someone I wouldn't be surprised to see. One thing, Rich, when we talk about something like that, the Houston Texans, who played in the Hall of Fame game Thursday night, they're keeping their entire organization here. They brought up not just the players and coaches, but people from the building to celebrate Andre Johnson, who's the first Houston Texan to go into the Hall. So you talk about Dion being here maybe for Devin Hester. The entire Houston Texans organization and, current players and past players are going to be here occupying a huge chunk of Tom Benson Stadium to honor Andre Johnson.
Yeah, and I look forward to his speech too, Steve, because some of the best speeches in the 20 years that I've been here are from guys who hardly said 5 words when they were playing, right? Like Isaac Bruce is a perfect example of that. Like he hardly ever spoke. Andre Reed's another guy, right? I mean, who didn't really speak. And now here comes Andre Johnson, who, I'm keen to hear what he's got to say. Julius Peppers, another guy kind of like that in this class. So
it's a real on that note. This is a group of guys who are like that. We know Dwight Freeney's very polished, but think of Patrick Willis. He doesn't say hardly anything. He is a very, very quiet man, and again, he's so smart. He's involved in the IT world, the Silicon Valley world. He's a guy from small town Tennessee who grew up in incredible circumstances. I mean, his story is amazing, and I'm really looking forward because I'm with you, Rich. Some of the best speeches we've heard have been guys we did not expect to knock our socks off, but this is their opportunity to finally let it all out.
Steve Wyche, 2 minutes left with my colleague from the NFL Media Group. In advance of tomorrow's coverage, we'll be hanging out together on NFL Network for the Induction Saturday here on the Friday of Hall of Fame weekend. So what happened last night? Doppler radar just took things over. Is that what happened last night, Steve?
Yeah, I mean, Mother Nature, too much lightning. I mean, that was the thing. The rain came in, but the lightning, we saw it in person, but just on the radar, it was going to be around for 3 or 4 hours. Both coaches, they already got in almost 4 quarters of football. Both coaches are like, it's good. We've got 3 more preseason games to get through. Let's protect everybody, especially people in the stands. So they called it. And Rich, it was actually, for the first half, one of the more entertaining Hall of Fame games that we've seen in years. I mean, the offense is moving up and down the field. That was pretty good. But the coaches were kind of like, we've done enough. Let's make it safe for everybody. And that was that. And the Bears are 1-0 in the preseason.
And both teams have a lot of hype around them. Houston as a team that can actually dethrone the Chiefs in the conference. And the Bears, we all know they're about to get their Hard Knocks star turn. What did you glean from both of the teams being around them at all?
Well, the Hard Knocks crews were there. First off, very much. The Hard Knocks crews were there. So we'll see some of this on Hard Knocks. But I mean, a couple things you gleaned, I've been to the Texans training camp and Rich, they're so deep. You add a Stephon Diggs to Nico Collins and Tank Dell and some of the guys there. You trade for Joe Mixon. Their offensive line already is very good. Their defense is 2 layers deep. They are 2 layers deep at every level. It is insane, the talent. So you see them, the way DeMeco Ryans was pushing them. When I'd been there, they'd been in pads for 3 or 4 consecutive days. But they all have the buy-in. So there's that part. And then when it comes to the Bears, I mean, and it's a true storyline, a true narrative we've all talked about. Caleb Williams is walking into a roster that Ryan Poles, he's giving him Keenan Allen, he's giving him DJ Moore. They've got running backs. They go out and they get DeAndre Swift to add to some players like Rashawn Johnson, that we saw last night, looked very good. There's some pieces on that defense. Remember, the Bears finished with the top run defense in the NFL last year. So we'll see how Caleb Williams adjusts. We'll see how his new offensive coordinator, Shane Waldron, adjusts. That's one thing that's got to come together. But they have some expectations. And Ryan Poles said they're not running from any of it. Okay, not from the quarterback. Because I asked him, I said, you guys are playing the Texans. Caleb is going to be compared to what C.J. Stroud did as a rookie. Ryan Poles is like, fine. You can set the bar whatever you want to be at, and Caleb Williams is going to run his own race. But standards, bars, whatever you want to call them, that's what they are going to buy into and try and exceed. And we'll see, because they're playing in a very tough division. But the Detroit, the Green Bay Packers are going to be good. The Vikings, we don't know what they're going to be with their quarterback situation. But I like the fact that both of these teams aren't running from expectation, and they're embracing it heading into 2024.
Before I let you go, you hearing anything about Justin Herbert at all and the injury that's got him in a walking boot for 2 weeks?
Yeah, nothing more than the reports. I mean, but in speaking to people last night before the game, they're like, hey, that's not an injury really to be toyed with, to plantar fascia. It's on your foot. That's your weight-bearing item. He's a big guy. So they really have to be careful on what they do in terms of rushing him back so he can get through all 17, because we know Jim Harbaugh, your guy, he's going to get the Chargers right. I went out to their training camp, just the whole organization that they have in terms of how they operate practice, the way that they're functioning now is different. So he's the key cog. They don't have what you would consider upper echelon skill at most of the skill positions on offense. So he's going to be asked to get a lot of things done. So again, they're just going to have to temper and be very moderate on how they get him back. I think it's better to have him back, even if he has to come back 2 or 3 games in, to get him through the season rather than rush him back to start.
So how many training camps have you already visited so far, Steve?
Yeah, I'm about 6 or 7 in. Like I said, the Texans are staying up here in Ohio because they play the Steelers in their preseason opener. So I'll be back with them Monday, fly out to the 49ers Tuesday, and wrap things up with the Raiders Wednesday. But I will tell you this, the one I've been at that I really enjoyed was the Ravens. John Harbaugh put them through almost 3 hours worth of on-field work. And they, like the Texans, you look at their roster and you're like, they're going to be right there again. They're loaded. We know their coaching staff, their expectation, their standard is what it is. So, again, with Rich, being able to go out and see these teams in a training camp and be able to compare one to the other, just on how the organizations run things, is a great thing about this job. And seeing a team like the Ravens or the Texans or the Lions, where they've come from, gets you real insight on how things could shake out through the season if these teams stay healthy.
So let me ask you finally, before I let you go for the rest of your Friday here. I've asked this of all of our colleagues that have been kind enough to answer the call to come on this program. Which team do you feel, draft, off-season, free agency, now in training camp, seeing them or not, or hearing about what you're hearing about, has fixed whatever 2023 caused them to trip up in? And that might even include the Chiefs offensively too. Like, which team do you think has improved itself for 2024 the most?
Wow. I mean, I've got to go back to a couple of teams I've seen. I mean, the Houston Texans, going out and getting a Stephon Diggs, adding a Danielle Hunter to that pass rush, and a player no one really talks about, Azeez Al-Shaair, a linebacker who played for D'Amico Ryans in San Francisco, was fantastic, a tackling machine with the Titans. He is now with a very, very good linebacking crew in Houston. They understood what they had to do. They added some veteran players who won. That's key, because a lot of teams in free agency had veteran players who are talented who come from teams who haven't won. Texans added guys who've won before and maybe can help some of these young players understand what it takes to break through. They're a team, and then looking at, the Detroit Lions too, going out and getting DJ Reader, defensive tackle, to play with next to Liam McNeil, to fortify their defense a little bit, getting Kevin Zeitler to go in and play guard on their offensive line where they lost Jonah Jackson. And then they just took care of their own. I mean, good grief, the contracts they're paying some of their offensive players and the buy-in that they have with Dan Campbell. Again, those are 2 good teams that we saw last year who I think addressed some areas that could maybe push them to get back to the conference championship or into the conference championship, maybe make a run at Super Bowls.
Steve, I'll see you tonight, and we'll hang out tomorrow. Looking forward to it, as always.
Looking forward to it, Rich.
All right. Thanks again. That's Steve Wyche, the one and only from NFL Network, NFL Media Group. And you could check the 2 of us out together, hanging out on Saturday.
Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.